all of this stuff in here, I was seeing tweets like, oh, we already knew this. Literally everything in this story is brand new. Like 95% of this story is completely brand new, and we found it through sources. And because you kept sending us to Flint, we were able to build these sources. So read along with me. I'm going to read slow because I do have coronavirus and I don't want to be coughing too much, so I won't be reading so fast. This is what Jen and I have uncovered. During the inauguration of his successor, outgoing Michigan Governor Rick Snyder needed a favor. At the January 2019 event, Snyder approached Karen Weaver, who was then the mayor of Flint, a city of nearly 100,000 people that was still reeling from financial decay and a toxic water crisis. He asked whether she could meet with Congressman Elijah Cummings. This was obviously when Elijah Cummings was still alive. Quote, "You have a lot of influence with him," Weaver remembered a worried Snyder saying to her about Cummings. At the time, Cummings was the incoming chairman of the powerful House Oversight Committee. Throughout the water crisis, Cummings had led the charge as Congress demanded that Snyder and his administration provide provide more information about what he knew about the poisonous water that ravaged the impoverished majority-minority Rust Belt city after it switched water sources to the corrosive Flint River in 2014, and when he knew it. More specifically, Cummings pushed for more information on when Snyder first learned of the lethal Legionella bacterial outbreak in Flint. Snyder testified to Congress that he first became aware of Legionella in January 2016 and held a press conference the next day. Flint residents didn't believe the governor. Their doubt intensified after Harvey Hollins, the director of the state's Urban and Metropolitan Initiatives Office, contradicted the governor, testifying to Congress that he had informed Snyder about Flint's Legionella outbreak in December 2015. Back at the inauguration, Weaver said Snyder asked her to get Cummings to, quote, back off from investigating him, emphasizing that he wanted to move on with his life as a private citizen. Oh, he wanted to move on, did he? The former governor. He said, quote, "It would go a long way if the request to the congressman came from Weaver," she told Vice. By the way, Vice is Jen and I. We did it for Vice, but, whatever. Weaver's former spokesperson, Candace Mushat, as well as two other sources, confirmed that she had described the governor's request to them after it occurred. Snyder did not respond to multiple requests for comment on this story. What Snyder didn't know was that Cummings and Weaver had already spoken after Democrats won control of the House in the 2018 midterms. Weaver said Cummings disclosed his plan to compel Snyder back to Congress for additional questioning. He wanted Weaver there, but Cummings' death in October 2019 prevented that from happening. After a Vice investigation spanning a year and a half across the state of Michigan, overwhelming evidence indicates Snyder had a good reason to worry. So I want to pause there. I'm going to just stop and kind of summarize a lot of these parts because, it's hard to listen to me read the story and you might not ever understand everything. So it took a long time to get Mayor Weaver, who lost in November, to go on the record. There was a lot of people that did not want to go on the record because, frankly, there's been a whole lot of intimidation of figures, including Mayor Weaver of Flint, a whole lot of intimidation coming from Rick Snyder and his top officials. And some might say, well, he's been out of office for a year, so why didn't they go on the record when he was out of office? It would take me longer to explain, but just because the Republican governor is out of office doesn't mean he and his inner top officials don't pose a threat. That doesn't necessarily mean a physical threat, but a threat to the former mayor and other people going on the record in terms of their careers. These Republican governors and Democratic governors, if you speak out against them, they have powerful allies in the private and public sphere. So I will say Mayor Weaver was very hesitant to go on the record, and it took it took relationship building to get her comfortable enough and to trust us to go on the record with us. And why we started the story replaying that scene at the inauguration was because if Governor Rick Snyder didn't have anything to hide, if he didn't do anything wrong in the Flint water investigation, Why was he so worried about the late Elijah Cummings investigating him? Why would you be worried about being investigated if you haven't done anything wrong? If you feel you acted promptly to preserve life in Flint, if you feel you did warn the residents of Flint as soon as you knew of the deadly water conditions. We're talking not just lead. We're talking hundreds of people have died. And this is just the documented cases of people that have died. The state only said 12 people died of Legionella, which is a very, very deadly waterborne disease. But PBS did a follow-up piece saying as many as 115 people might have died in Flint because of this waterborne disease, which came because of the switch to the Flint River. And Jen and I have gone up and down those streets of Flint. We can't scientifically tell you how many people have died, but we can tell you a lot more people have died in Flint than 115 people. We're talking people dying of cancers since the water switch, people in their 30s, in their 40s. These people didn't have family histories for these cancers. People dying of kidney failure, liver disease. Majority of people we found that had died had no major health problems before the water switch and did not have family predisposition to these cancers and other illnesses. So we felt it was important to start the story with what Weaver was claiming, that Snyder basically begged her, please get Elijah Cummings to stop investigating me. He was scared because he no longer had the Republicans controlling the House of Representatives. I don't credit the Democrats often, but he would be more at threat to the Democrats coming in controlling the House. And Cummings, before he died, he would be more facing a larger threat from Chairman Cummings investigating him than anybody else. Okay, so we start the story with Weaver on the record that Snyder was basically begging her to get Elijah Cummings to back off, stop investigating me. Again, if you have nothing to hide, why are you trying to get the mayor of Flint to get Elijah Cummings to not investigate you? Just we'll leave that there. Let's move on now. Then stuff gets really explosive because we found out information that no one else found out. Hundreds of confidential pages of documents obtained by Vice, along with emails and interviews, reveal a coordinated 5-year cover-up overseen by Snyder and his top officials to prevent news of Flint's deadly water from going public while there was still times to save lives. That is a very important part. To prevent news of Flint's deadly water from going public while there was still time to save lives, and then limit the damage after the crisis made global headlines. All told, the waterborne bacterial disease Legionella may have killed at least 115 people in 2014 and 2015, and potentially more whose pneumonia wasn't officially considered Legionella's disease, the illness caused by Legionella. In addition to the outbreak, Flint's water supply was contaminated with lead and other heavy metals, harmful bacteria, carcinogens, and other toxic components. This wreaked havoc on Flint residents, leaving them with a laundry list of illnesses, including kidney and liver problems, severe bone and muscle pain, gastrointestinal problems, loss of teeth, autoimmune diseases, neurological deficiencies, miscarriages, Parkinson's disease, severe fatigue, seizures, and volatile mood disorders. And I say this, people ask Jordan and Jen, why do you keep covering this? Cover other things. Well, when you sit on porches with 30-something-year-olds with no teeth left, when you go back somewhere every year, and every time you go back, you see the same people literally slowly dying in front of you. I don't exaggerate. I mean dying. Because they have permanent damage. When you see people, literally, people I respect, I don't mean it disrespectfully, that might be 36, 37, and they look like they're 65 now. When you see people, literally, you don't know if they're having a heart attack. You ask them, do you want me to call an ambulance? They say, no, this happens every night. My heart just gets, my breathing goes bad. People's bodies are literally falling apart, not just from the lead, but from other toxins that were in that water. That's why we go back. And as I've always said, it's not only a Flint story. This is, what kind of country do we want to live in? You want to live in a country where through no fault of your own, we're talking right now, let's look at the coronavirus. Through no fault of your own, you get sick. Either your government, through negligence, or intentionally. We could debate whether it was negligence or intentionally in Flint. You get sick, you want to live in a country where your government is allowed to leave you to die? Because that's what's happened in Flint, Michigan. Jen could tell you that, and I'm telling you that. That's what's happened. And I think on a wider scale, you think in 6 months, the media is going to be covering the coronavirus and the after effects? You think in a year, the media is going to be covering the coronavirus and the after effects? You think in a year, you think in 2 years, the media is going to be covering all the people that lost their jobs that were never hired back by those companies? You think they're going to be covering the massive bonuses that the recipients of the corporate bailout are getting? There is serious parallels between what happened in Flint and what is going to happen with corona. A different kind of poisoning nonetheless. You didn't cause it, and you're the victims, both health-wise and economically. Hope you enjoyed that last video. Hop on over to statuscoup.com where you can sign up for our email list and become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. Membership is how we grow. That's statuscoup.com/join. And remember, join our email list so we can grow the revolution with you.